My name's Danny English, I'm a storyteller, and I've recently been working with the Yorkshire Dales Millennium Trust to bring you some magical stories about the Yorkshire Dales. Now today I am at the beautiful Malham Cove. You can see it up here behind me. Now if you go onto the top of Malham Cove, right up there is a tree unlike any other tree you've ever seen. You see, this tree is growing sideways. At least, I always thought it was a tree. Now I know the truth. And I know the truth because I know the story. When we look at Malham Cove as well, all of my life, I thought that Malham Cove was a prehistoric waterfall. But now I know it isn't. Now I know what Malham Cove really is. And I know because I know the story. And I'm wondering if you would like to know the story too. You see, a long time ago, Malham Cove wasn't a prehistoric waterfall. Malham Cove was the side of a huge stone castle. But this castle wasn't the home to a king or a queen or a princess or a prince. This castle was the home to a great stone troll. Now all stone trolls live down in the centre of the earth where there is lots and lots of stone for them. But this great stone troll, he wasn't happy living in the centre of the earth. This great stone troll had bigger plans. This great stone troll had decided that it was going to live on the surface of the earth. And it had a plan to rid the surface of the earth of all of its trees and its plants and its soils and turn the earth into a big ball of solid rock. Now the stone troll had been plotting. He had created a great army of stone cutter trolls, and the army had been sent out across the lands. They would crush the forests, rip up the plants and the wildflowers, and destroy all of the soil until only bare rock could be seen. And then this army would bring the rock back, and one piece of rock at a time they would add to the great stone castle. Now from a distant peak, some of the animals of the world were watching this happen. The deer and the badger and the fox and the hare and the wolf. And they knew that this couldn't continue. With every forest that was flattened, homes were lost. With every wildflower ripped up, food was gone for the insects. They weren't sure what to do, but they knew that if they asked for the help of Mother Nature, just maybe all would be well. So together they turned their back on the great stone castle and they headed over the hills, and they walked for days and weeks and months until they came to the far forests of the north. And when they arrived in the far forest of the north, they ventured inside amongst the trees and they called out for Mother Nature. And they waited. And after a while, she appeared. She came through the forest. She was as beautiful and as strong and as courageous and wise as she'd always looked. Her big red hair fell down her back like a waterfall, and her green robes hung off her, going all the way to the ground, and she moved so delicately through the forest that it may have been thought that she didn't have feet. It was as if she would glide across the forest floor, never leaving a single footprint. And the animals told Mother Nature what had happened. They told her of the great stone troll and his desire to destroy all of the earth. and just make it into rock. And they asked her for help. And together they walked until they arrived in the valley here, looking up at the great castle. And Mother Nature walked forward, and she got to the great stone gates, and she hammered on the gates. And the gates swung open, and she walked in, and there stood in front of her, in all of his mighty, was the great stone troll. And Mother Nature said to the great stone troll, "This must end. Your attempt to turn the earth into just a ball of rock is destroying the homes of all of the creatures." And the stone troll listened, a little smile on his face. And she said to the stone troll, "I give you 3 days to end this madness." And the stone troll thought for a moment, and he nodded his head, and he said, "I agree." But Mother Nature saw something in his eyes. She didn't trust him. So she turned and she walked out, and she headed back to the animals. And she said to them, "We have 3 days to hatch a plan." And she sat and she thought long, and she thought hard about what she would do. And then she called out on the wind. She called to the great earthworms of Ecuador. Earthworms that are the size of freight trains. She called on them and she said, "Come, we need your help." She said to the great earthworms, "On my call, begin to burrow big tunnels for the roots of the trees, so that when we replant the trees, it will be easy for them to grow." And the earthworms lay in the valley and waited. She then called on the great birds of Australia. And when they arrived, she said, "Great birds, we need your help. When the time comes to plant seeds, you must carry them far and wide and scatter them across the land." And the great birds agreed. And they sat in the valley and they waited. And then she called for the wind itself. She said to the wind, "Gather as many seeds as you can. Pile them high in the valley, and when the time comes, help the birds to spread them far and wide." And the wind agreed, and it readied itself in the valley. And 3 days passed, and after 3 days, Mother Nature looked across the land and she could still see the stone cutter ants taking down forests, ripping up soil. So she returned to the castle. And again she knocked on the door. But as she knocked on the door swung open, and this time the courtyard was empty. Mother Nature walked forward. Little did she know what was awaiting. You see, up above, on the turrets of the castle, the stone cutter trolls had woven a huge heavy net out of rocks, and as she stepped into the centre of the courtyard, they threw it down and it landed on her. The weight was so heavy it wasn't worth struggling. And then the great stone troll appeared. He told the stone cutter ants to take Mother Nature to the top of the tallest turret in the castle. And they did. And with the weight of the net, she fell fast asleep. And when she woke, days later, she looked out from the turret and she could see all of the green lands. But the forests were gone, and the flowers were gone, and the plants were gone. She had to do something to stop the stone troll. So she called on the great earthworms of Ecuador. She asked them, "Burrow your tunnels, ready yourselves for the seeds." And the great earthworms, like huge trains, set off across the land. But the great stone troll spotted them, and with his magic he turned them all into stone. And when you come to this part of the Yorkshire Dales, you can still see them today. Big columns snaking over the land. And Mother Nature saw this, so she called on the great birds of Australia. She said, grab the seeds and spread them far and wide. But before the birds could take off, the great stone troll heard this. Again, it used its magic and transformed the birds into great rocks. And if you visit this part of the Yorkshire Dales, you still see them today, scattered across the hillside, great big stone boulders. Mother Nature wasn't sure what to do. She called to the wind. She said, wind, you pick up the piles of seeds and begin to spread them far and wide. And the wind readied itself. But the stone troll heard this. And the stone troll turned all of the piles of seeds into stone. And when you visit this part of the Yorkshire Dales, you can still see them, big piles of limestones that used to be seeds. And the stone troll began to laugh. There is nothing you can do to defeat me, he said. But Mother Nature had one more trick, one more piece of magic within her. She fell down on her knees and she took her green cloak and she wrapped it around her. And she began to mutter magical words that nobody had ever heard before. And up above, the sky began to turn dark. The clouds came together and began to swirl around. The wind picked up. Something magical was happening. And then the green cloak began to move. And something began to appear. And from inside the green cloak came a leaf. The leaf was on the twig. And the twig was on a branch. And the branch was on the trunk. And from beneath the cloak, Mother Nature transformed herself into the mother tree. And she stood there, tall and proud, branches out. She said, I will create the seeds that will return the trees to the land. And with all her energy, she began to sway. And as she swayed, new seeds appeared on her branches. She called to the wind. She said, carry these seeds to each corner of the earth and spread them. And the wind did. And he carried them and he took them. And the great stone troll laughed. And the great stone troll tried to turn the seeds into stone, but the magic inside these seeds was pure. And his magic didn't work. The wind picked the seeds and spread them. And the mother tree continued to create seeds. And as it created seeds, the wind whipped them. And they went far and wide. But the more and more seeds she created, the more exhausted she became. With each new batch of seeds, she began to tilt and tilt and tilt. Take the seeds, she called out. And the wind continued to spread them. But Mother Nature finally fell until she was completely horizontal. She called out to the wind, we need help. How can we plant all these trees? How can we spread these seeds? How can we return forests to the land? And the wind said, tell us what to do, Mother Tree. I will spread the word and we will help. And the mother tree called out, wherever you are, whoever you are, When you get a chance to plant a tree, take that chance with both hands and plant the tree for the goodness of the earth and everything on it. And with that, she created one last batch of seeds, and she fell still. And the wind took these seeds, and the wind spread them. But as the wind went across the land, every person that it came across, it dropped those words like raindrops into their ear. Whoever you are, wherever you are, if you get a chance to plant a tree, take it with both hands. For the goodness of the earth and all the creatures that live on it. And from that day, people have planted trees. The stone troll knew that he was defeated, and he returned to the centre of the earth, where he rests still to this very day. And you may also be wondering, what happened to the mother tree? Well, you can find out for yourselves. You see, if you take a walk to the top of Malham Cove, the old stone castle, on the top there, you will find the mother tree still lying on her side, waiting for all the forests of the world to be replanted.